OK, so this is step number 1. Step number 2 is determine the characteristics of your comparison distribution. And you've already done that. We spent a whole almost hour doing that. Determine the characteristics of comparison distribution. And that would be exactly this. F of 27.8 with 8 degrees of freedom and 8 degrees of freedom denominator and 3 degrees of freedom numerator. And that would be all you need to do. It would be also called an F distribution instead of a T distribution. OK, step number 2. Step number 3, determine your cutoff score on comparison distribution. And that would be, you would draw this. This is sort of not a perfect, it's just to allow us to see how the distribution looks like. Typically, this would be around 1. You won't get anything negative because F is a ratio made out of variances. So variances cannot be negative. So you always have it positive above 0. But it could be between 1 and 0. That could happen, especially because of rounding error and because of error in general. So your cutoff point is determined by going to the table, just like usual. And so you go to the table, which is on page. And please follow with me, because this is important. It's hard to read these tables. So it's on page 440. And you're looking at degrees of freedom denominator, which goes down, and degrees of freedom numerator goes across. So you've got 3 degrees of freedom numerator. So your third column here. And you go to the 8th row. And 8th row, third column, at the 0.05 level, the cutoff point for that is 4.07. Everybody see that? So going across is degrees of freedom numerator. Going down is degrees of freedom denominator. And then the cutoff is at the 0.05 level, because that's what the question asked you. So you would put it right here. 4.07 is your cutoff. Determine your cutoff score on the comparison distribution. Step number 4 is determine your own score on the comparison distribution. And you would say, oh, it's 27.8, so it's somewhere out in the periphery here. So hey, this is extreme enough that we can reject the null. So step number 5, decide whether to reject the null or not to reject the null. Say that again? Number 4 is determine your own score on the comparison distribution, or plot your own score on the comparison distribution. What's the actual words that they use? What's the preferred terminology? Determine your sample score on the comparison distribution. That's the determine your sample score. This is your observed or sample score. It's 27.8, and it's out here. This is 4.07. You see, it's really extreme. It's much higher than 1. 1 would tell you, if you had a 1, it'll tell you that your S between is what? If you get an F ratio of 1, what does that indicate? That S between is equal to S within. So in a way, S between, which includes S within plus the differences between means, is actually ending up being equal, meaning that there's no differences between means. Right? Everybody understand that concept? OK. So if that's the case, then 1 is not significant. Anything above 1 is significant. But the question is, how much above 1 do you need to reject the null? Because remember, we are doing a lot of sampling here. We're doing estimation. We're doing sampling. We are introducing error. It's possible that these little variations are causing you to have an F above 1. If the world was perfect, you would know any change above 1 is significant. But the word isn't perfect. In fact, if you had total knowledge of every single thing, any change above 1 will be indicating that there is a difference. But since you don't know that, you have to sort of judge your value. Is this value big enough for me to say, oh, yeah, this is not the result of estimation error and error caused by estimation and sampling error. But in fact, it is the result of systematic differences between these means. And this clearly is, because it's so much above 1 compared to the cutoff. So the answer is you can reject the null. Yes?
So for the denominator, if it gets high enough,
Uh-huh.
I think it goes after, it goes 29, 30, and then it starts going by 5.
Uh-huh, yeah.
So if it's 43,
43.
or,
Like at the
if
extreme
it's
end.
Right,
Is-
if
yeah.
you have one where the denominator is in between,
It-
which should
Oh,
be-
don't worry about that. I'm not going to give you that. Most of this is going to be done by a computer. This is just to introduce you to the concepts. So it'll give you an exact p-value and exact f-value. Computers will do that, and it'll compare. OK, so we've done it in an hour.